You're lying in bed and your phone lights up. So, what's happening with that proposal and your stomach drops because you don't know what to say anymore? Not because you don't care, but because nothing is moving. You've been patient, you've made excuses for months. Timing, money, family, let's see. You've prayed, you've waited, and now patience is starting to feel less like Sabr and more like you're volunteering to stay stuck. So a question keeps coming back, even when you push it away. Is this actually patience, or am I wasting my time? This video isn't here to rush you or tell you to give up, and it's not here to blame destiny for heartbreak. It's about the patterns people miss when they're emotionally invested, the quiet ways Allah blocks what isn't meant to settle, even when it doesn't end loudly. Number 1, when being with them requires you to shrink. Here's a hard moment most people don't catch while it's happening. You stop saying certain things, not because they're wrong, but because they complicate things. You soften your values. You delay conversations that matter. You tell yourself this isn't the time, even though the time never seems to come. At first it feels like maturity, like compromise, like love. But slowly you notice something uncomfortable. You're editing yourself just to keep the connection alive. You're becoming quieter, smaller, more careful. Not because you're growing, but because you're afraid of rocking the boat. And that's when you need to pause. Because Allah does not build relationships by erasing the person you are becoming. What He puts barakah in does not require you to consistently betray your conscience, your boundaries, or your sense of self. Ask yourself honestly. And don't rush the answer, who have I become, while trying to make this work? If you're constantly explaining your values, defending your discomfort, or convincing yourself that it will get better later, that's not patience. That's self-abandonment wearing a religious mask. And the danger isn't that the relationship fails. The danger is that it succeeds, while costing you parts of yourself you won't easily get back. That's usually the first quiet sign. Number 2, when nothing moves. No matter how hard you try. This is where confusion really sets in, because you're not careless, you're not passive, you actually try. You have the conversations people avoid, you make plans, you ask for clarity, you fix what you can fix. And every time you think, okay, now it'll move forward, something blocks it again, not dramatically, just enough to stop momentum. Timing is always almost right. Families are almost convinced. Circumstances are almost settled. And that word, almost, starts draining you. At first you blame yourself. Maybe you're not doing enough. Maybe you're asking too much, so you adjust. You lower expectations. You wait longer than you promised yourself you would. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to face. When Allah puts barakah in something, effort creates movement, even if it's slow. When He doesn't, effort turns into exhaustion. That doesn't mean stop trying at the first obstacle. It means pay attention to patterns, not isolated problems. One delay is life. Repeated resistance, despite sincere effort, is information. This is where many people confuse patience with denial. Sabr is staying upright while doing what's right. Sabr is not staying stuck while your clarity keeps being postponed. And the longer you ignore this sign, the more time you invest. Not into building something, salam, but into defending why it hasn't been built yet. That's when effort quietly turns into attachment. And attachment can blind even sincere people. Number 3, when the connection slowly pulls you away from Allah. Here's a moment that should make you pause. You miss a prayer, and you don't rush to make it up. Not because you don't care, but because you were in the middle of something. And that something starts feeling more urgent than your relationship with Allah. It doesn't happen overnight, that's why it's dangerous. You start timing your worship around them. Conversations stretch late, plans overlap. And slowly, the things that used to anchor you, prayer, dua, reflection, start feeling inconvenient instead of necessary. You tell yourself this is temporary. Once things settle, I'll fix it. But ask yourself honestly, has being connected to this person made it easier or harder for you to remember Allah? This isn't about them being bad, and it's not about blame. it's about alignment. Allah warns about this kind of regret clearly. "Oh, woe to me! I wish I had not taken that one as a close companion. He led me away from the remembrance after it had come to me." Read that again. The pain wasn't love. The pain was distance from Allah that felt justified at the time. A connection that consistently weakens your spiritual discipline isn't neutral, even if it feels emotional, even if it feels intense, even if you keep calling it worth it, because anything that pulls you away from Allah will eventually pull peace away too. And by the time you notice, you're not just attached to a person, you're attached to a version of yourself that's drifting. That's not a small sign. That's a warning. Number 4, when you're in love with who they could be. Here's a thought that usually hits people late and hurts more because of it. You're not attached to what's happening. You're attached to what might happen. You keep replaying future versions in your head. If they mature, if circumstances improve, if families soften, if they finally understand you the way you understand them, and that future keeps you loyal to a present that keeps disappointing you. So you endure things you wouldn't normally accept. You explain behavior you wouldn't excuse for anyone else. You stay emotionally invested not because today is good, but because tomorrow feels promising. But pause for a second and be honest. How long have you been surviving on potential? Islam doesn't teach us to build our lives on imaginary versions of people. It teaches us to deal with reality clearly, responsibly, without self-deception. There's a difference between hope and avoidance. Hope motivates action. Avoidance delays truth. If the relationship only works in your imagination, that's not patience. That's postponing clarity. And the longer you stay attached to what someone might become, the more time you lose with who they actually are. This is why letting go feels so painful here. You're not just losing a person, you're grieving a future you invested in emotionally. One that never truly existed. And sometimes Allah blocks a connection, not because the person is bad, but because the version you're waiting for isn't real. Number 5, when letting go hurts, but staying costs you more. Here's the moment most people avoid facing honestly. You know leaving will hurt, but staying is already hurting, just in quieter ways. You feel it in how tired you are, even when nothing dramatic is happening. In how much mental energy this connection takes. In how often you have to convince yourself that what you're feeling is normal or temporary. You tell yourself, at least I'm not alone. But deep down, you don't feel at peace either. That's when you need to stop asking Wulwan, will this end? And start asking a harder question. What is this costing me right now? Because sometimes Allah doesn't remove someone suddenly. He lets you feel the weight long enough for you to realize that the price is too high. Allah says, it may be that you dislike a thing while it is good for you, and you like a thing while it is bad for you. Allah knows, and you do not. Notice it. The verse doesn't say letting go is easy. It says your perspective is limited. Short-term pain feels obvious. Long-term damage hides. And this is the sign that usually settles it. When the thought of walking away hurts, but the thought of staying slowly breaks you, at that point the connection isn't teaching you patience anymore. It's teaching you how to tolerate unhappiness. And Allah doesn't ask you to sacrifice your peace, your faith, or your self-respect just to avoid temporary pain. Sometimes what He's protecting you from isn't the loss of a person, it's the loss of yourself. If you recognize yourself in these signs, this isn't about labeling your situation or rushing a decision. It's about clarity, because sometimes the problem isn't just who you're attached to, it's how the attachment exists. Many connections today live in a dangerous in-between, not marriage, not nothing. Just enough emotional closeness to feel bonded, without the responsibility, protection, or commitment that Allah placed around real relationships. And that space, that grey area, is exhausting for the heart. Allah didn't make boundaries to punish us. He made them because attachment without protection slowly drains dignity, peace, and iman. When something is haram, it doesn't always collapse instantly. Sometimes it lingers, just long enough for you to normalize the anxiety, the waiting, the self-negotiation. That's why Allah warns us not to even approach certain paths, not because He's harsh, but because He knows what they do to the heart before they break it. So if Allah is making something heavy, unclear, stalled, or costly, it's not always because the person is bad. Sometimes it's because the structure is wrong. This video was never about they weren't written for you, and it's not about blaming destiny for difficult choices. It's about realizing that Allah's mercy sometimes shows up as discomfort, nudging you away from what slowly harms you, even if you're emotionally attached. If this reached you in a moment of confusion, leave a quiet dua in the comments. Ya Allah, don't let my heart attach where you haven't placed khair. You never know who might say Amin with you. Until then, trust Allah enough to choose clarity over comfort. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.